Who was Matthew, the tax collector? What kind of taxes would he collect? And why did Jesus find him and call him on the shore of the Sea of Galilee? Everybody knows the story about Peter, Andrew, John, and James. They were fishermen in the Sea of Galilee, and Jesus calls them while they were fishing. But not many know that also Matthew was called on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. What was he doing there? And why was he there? So today we're going to analyze the verse Mark 2:14, and we're going to try to understand all that. Let's start. Mark 2:14. Let's start reading. Kai paragon eiden lewin ton tu alphaiu, kathemenon epitotelonium, kai legeuto, akolutheimoi, kai anastas ekoluthesen auto. All right, let's start analyzing the verse and the grammar behind. So the verse starts as usual with a kai, which is a conjunction, and here the subject is Jesus, and the verb is right here, Aiden. This is verb number one, and connected to this verb, there's another verb in the form of participle, okay, connected to Jesus. So two actions. And then this verb, Aiden, holds this direct object. So this direct object. Okay, you see that this is kind of capitalized because it's the name of the apostle Matthew in Hebrew. We're gonna go over it. And then there is this specification of who Matthew was. He was ton to alphaio. Now there's something missing here, and we're going to see that because you have two, if you see this, two definite articles, one after the other, okay? One in the accusative case, ton, and the other in the genitive case. Now, this is very weird, right? We don't put two definite articles one after another, right? There's obviously something missing, understood. We're going to see what's missing there. It's a rather common form in Greek. And then there is this genitive connected to this other proper name, Alphaio, which is the father of Matthew. And then the apostle Matthew, which is the object of the first sentence, is doing something. And so you have this other participle here, kathemenon, participle, which is connected to, you see it's in the menon, this ending again is in the accusative case, so it's connected to the direct object that was doing something, and he was doing something here, epitotelonion. This is a prepositional phrase introduced by preposition epi, and it indicates the place where Matthew was. And then there is this other second verb, lege, introduced by Kai. So there is Kai Aiden, first verb, Kai lege. This is the second action of Jesus. Okay. Auto, this is the dative, to him. Okay. The one that Jesus is talking to. And then after this, you have the speech, the direct speech of Jesus that says, sorry, it's just these two words, akoluthei moi. So this is the imperative. Okay. This is the command that Jesus gives Matthew. And so you have this imperative, akoluthei moi. Moi is a personal pronoun. It means me, personal pronoun in the first person singular. All right. And so the consequence is that, and Kai, now it's Matthew acting, ekoluthesen. So this is verb number 3, which is is an action performed by Matthew, not by Jesus at this point, connected again with a participle here. So the construction is similar to this beginning, paragon eiden, anastas ekoluthesen, right? It's like the connection of two verbs that indicate two actions together. The first action is put in the participle form, and then you have the main verb. And then the last auto, very similar to this auto, is another dative personal pronoun also. personal pronoun in the third person singular. Him just means him. All right. So now that we have a general understanding of the grammatical structure of the sentence, we are ready to translate. So as we said, Mark 2:14 starts with the conjunction kai and the verb here is Aiden, which is the aorist. We've seen it many times before. It's the aorist irregular verb for oral, which means to see. To see. So it's Jesus saw. Okay, he saw. So this third person singular saw. Paragon. Now, paragon we said is a participle from the verb parago. Okay, parago. The verb paragon means to go, simply to go, or to go about, to go around. It's made up of two pieces. The preposition para, which indicates a motion generally around something, and then the verb ago, which generally means to lead. So parago literally means to lead around, but it's the meaning is just to go about, go around, just walk around. Okay, why? Because in Mark 2:13 we know that Jesus went back to the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and he was passing by. He was walking by the shore. Okay, and so we could translate and walking by. Okay, walking by, he saw. Who did he see? Well, this name here, Levin, doesn't really sound like Matthew. Okay, this is what generally is translated as Levi. Okay, Levi. Now it's very interesting that in Greek there's no V sound, so there's no letter for the V sound. The closest one is the upsilon. So this sounds like Lewin, but we know that this is a kind of transliteration of the Hebrew name Levi, okay, which was a very common name, by the way. Now, how do we know that this guy whose name was Levi was actually Matthew? Well, we know it from the other Gospels that narrate the same story. The Gospel of the Gospel of Matthew himself, that identify himself as Matthew, and also from the Gospel of Luke that identifies this tax collector as Matthew. They're the same person, so very likely he had two names. Probably Levi was his original name, and maybe Matthew was the name that Jesus gave him later. He became known as Matthew. That was common, at that time to have multiple names. So, but they are basically the same person. So and going by, he saw Levi. Now we said there's something missing here. Ton the literally means the mm, of the. Okay, two in this genitive singular. So what's missing here? Well, when it's not said, it's generally understood as son of. Okay, so the word here that's missing is son, the son of the, and this is the name of the father, Alphaeus. Okay, Alphaeus. So son of Alphaeus, basically. This is the general practice of putting definite articles in front of proper names that we don't do in English. But this expression, the of Alphaeus means son of Alphaeus, basically. We don't really know who this Alphaeus was, but it's just a piece of information that Mark gives us. All right. And so passing by, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus. And so we already said that this Levi, this accusative, is connected with this accusative kathemenon. It's in the accusative case, so it's in the accusative because this is the object, direct object of the verse of the verb aiden, to see. And so kathemenon comes from the verb kathemai, verb kathemai, which means to sit, to sit. So Matthews was sitting. Okay, so this participle means sitting. Okay, he was sitting. Where was he sitting? Well, this is the prepositional phrase that tells us where he was sitting. Okay, so he was sitting epi to telonion. So the preposition epi generally is translated as on or upon or at basically indicates the place where somebody is standing, is sitting, is staying. Okay, so it's not a preposition that indicates a motion, but indicates a place where somebody is. Okay, so can be translated according to the context as on, upon, at, in. Right, these are all legitimate translation. In this particular case, where was Matthew sitting? Well, he was sitting in the or at the telonion. Now, this is a very technical word that basically means the custom toll. The custom toll. Okay, it's basically it was this structure where the tax collector were staying and where people had to pass through, right, to pay their taxes. Okay, to pay their taxes. So he was sitting at the custom toll. Okay, and so Jesus, he saw him there, sitting there, Kai, and Jesus lege tells. You see how Mark, this is done by Mark all the time. He moves from the aorist tense, Aiden, to the present tense. Okay, present. So it's he saw him and he tells him. Okay, he tells to him, auto, to him, in the dative, to him. This is because Mark loves to bring, the action alive with the present tense. So he saw him and he tells him, and what he tells him is these two words, akoluthei moi. Now the verb akolutheo, let's write it here. Akolutheo means to follow. Okay, to follow is the verb of the follower, of the disciples of Jesus. Okay, come follow me. Right, that's a typical command of Jesus. Okay, and so akoluthei is the imperative verb, imperative tense, active, follow, and he generally wants the dative case. Okay, so come after me or something like that. So follow, we could translate just follow me. Okay, follow me. So a very brief command of Jesus, follow me. And well, what happens? Well, this happens, Kai, and what does Matthew do? Well, anastas. So you have this participle in the masculine singular nominative case, right? Because it refers to the subject of the action, which is in this case Matthew. In the aorist tense, in this ending is telling you that it's in the aorist tense, but it doesn't really matter. Comes from the verb anistemi. Okay, anistemi, and it's made up of two pieces, right? The preposition ana. Okay, the preposition ana means up. Okay, is indicates a motion to go up. Okay, down up motion, and istemi is like to be, to stand, a verb that indicates to stand, right? So literally this means stand, to stand up. Anistemi, to stand up, to stand up. All right. So and after standing up, ekoluthesen, he followed auto, him, again in the dative because this verb wants the dative. Okay. So the verb is again in the aorist tense, indicates a precise action in the past. So, and after standing up, he followed him. All right, so we can put everything together and say, and while he was passing by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the custom post, and he tells him, follow me. And after standing up, he followed him. So, what kind of tax collector was Matthew or Levi, right? Well, and why was he sitting there in this custom post on the shore of the Sea of Galilee? Okay, well, to understand this, we need to understand the taxation during that time under the Roman Empire. There were so many different taxes that people had to pay to the Roman Empire. There was a land tax. There was a direct tax on the produce of their land. Right, they would produce crop and they would have to pay some taxes on the revenue. Right, farmers. Then there was a head tax, right? So, and that's what Luke talks about in the census, right? When Mary and Joseph had to go down to Bethlehem, right? They were there was this big census going on because people wanted to have the head count, right? The Roman emperor wanted to have the head count so that he could exact taxes from each person. And then there was also a system of custom taxes. These were indirect taxes that were in the form of tolls of on the transportation of goods, right? Taxes were generally collected at ports or important crossroads, place of commerce, offices by the city gates, and so on, right? Matthew was exactly one of these tax collector, right? So he was collecting taxes from the transportation of goods. That's why he was sitting in his tax booth by the Sea of Galilee, because the Sea of Galilee, right, in particular that in Capernaum, was a place situated on a main transport route, right, from the sea, up to Damascus in Syria. So all the traders, would get all the goods from the ships on the coast, and then they would travel inside, and to go up to Damascus in Syria, they would have to go through the place where through Galilee, in particular to the Sea of Galilee. And so he was standing there because there was this transportation of goods. This was a main route of transportation, and so he was sitting there all day and collecting taxes. Now, why was that so bad? Well, it was so bad because Matthew was a Jew, right? Levi was absolutely Jewish name, and tax collector were Jews that had sold themselves to the Roman Empire. Basically, were working for the Roman Empire to collect and generally extort money to their fellow Jews, right? So they were totally sellouts, right? That's why they were despised so much. They were considered the symbol of sinners, right? They had completely betrayed their own blood, right? So Matthew was one of those. And it's very beautiful if we look at the whole dynamics of how Jesus calls Matthew, and how Matthew responds. Matthew is sitting down, okay, in this tax booth. And that's also very symbolic, right? It expresses our condition before God calls us, right? We are sitting in our sin, right? We are sitting in this tax booth completely dead in sin, right? We are not even able to stand up by ourselves, right? That's the message, right? Matthew's the symbol of the sinner is sitting in his sin, right? The tax booth is the symbol of being slave to sin, right? Is basically locked in this tax booth because he needed to be protected, right? People didn't like tax collectors, so it is the symbol of the sinner, dead in his sin and slave of his sin. He was sitting down, and well, what happens? Jesus passed by. Is a casual encounter, right? Jesus passed by on the Sea of Galilee. He sees him, and he calls him, and it's an invitation. Come, follow me, right? And so what happens? Well, Matthew stands up. That's when it's the symbol of our regeneration, right? When God comes and bestow our graces in our heart so that we can respond to that grace and stand up, right? We cannot stand up by ourselves. We are dead in our sins. But when Jesus passed by and calls us, and we respond by standing up and following him, that's when we are reborn again and justified.